Any queries, anytime you people can stop me and we can discuss about it. Uh, this was the a module which has been given to me to discuss with you instead of I delivering the things. If any question comes out, I'll be very happy to answer this. So we will be discussing about the synchronous sequential circuits, and here we will be just looking at from the point of view of how do we rig up the or design the circuit on the sequential logic. So starting from the SR logic, JK, DET flip-flops, then we will also understand these flip-flops, how we design it from the latch, and what are the components of level triggering and edge triggering. And then we will be moving on to touching upon the counters, synchronous and asynchronous type of counters, modulo counters, then the multiple cascaded counters, how do we design it, and then moving on to the registers, where we will be interested in serial in, serial out. Sometimes we require the parallel data which need to be transmitted from the transmitter to the receiver. How do we convert the serial data into a parallel data, and similarly at the receiver parallel data is converted into a serial data. And the Moore and Millet models normally used with respect to the finite state machines, and this also we will see with the counter examples, and we also quickly look into the state diagram, state reduction, and state assignments also. But these we are not exactly following in the sequential order here, even though we are doing a synchronous sequential circuit. I'll be jumping here and there and trying to cover everything as much as possible. So in the pre-lunch session, you have learned about the combinational logic circuits, where it is designed based on using the logic gates, where your current output will be depending only on the current inputs. So moving on to the little advanced component here, the sequential logic circuits. So where the current output depends on the past outputs also, apart from the current input. So those we call it as a sequential logic circuits. The best example what we can take it here is in the football game. You see that the current score would be the previous goals plus the new goal which has been made by the team. So your previous goal, if suppose is score is 5, then the new goal has been done by the team, the football team. Then your current score would be a 6. Okay, so it will be dependent on your current score plus the previous scores. If the same thing, if you look at on the other side, the people who have not won the game, then they will be retaining the same thing, because your new goal will be a 0. Okay, so it will be retained as 5. So these type of things we call it as a sequential logic circuits. So sequential logic circuits, to remember the past outputs or the states of the circuitry, we require some storage element, and that we normally call it as a memory element. So if your your circuit output only depends on the current input, then we call it as a combinational. The combinational circuit integrated with the memory element, then where the memory element will store the past outputs, and that will be one of the input for the combinational circuit along with the current state, current input, and that will give us the output. Okay, the current output. So it requires some memory element or the storage element. So how do we go about this? So before we know how to generate or the storage element or the memory element, I will quickly just brush up on the combinational circuit and the sequential circuit, what we have understood now. So basically you see that the output is completely discovered by the present state of the inputs in the combinational circuitry, where the present input as well as the past state output of the circuitry is also required to identify the present output. So that is the basic difference between the combinational circuit and the sequential circuit. Whereas when it comes to the storage capability of the combinational circuit, it does not store any data because it is your output is completely depends on the present input. So whereas the sequential circuit need to store the data, previous results, so it can store a small amount of data in the circuit. So the best examples can be studied or compared with these combinational circuits and sequential circuits is through the application. So you can see that the adders, encoders, multiplexers are some of the examples of the combinational circuits where your adder output is completely depends upon the present input what you are giving. If suppose I want to say a 5 plus 4 want to be added to numbers, then my result will be a 9. Okay. The encoders also you can encode the bits. You can use the multiplexers, multiplex the sum of the signals, and get the multiplexed data. Whereas in the sequential circuit, the flip-flops and the latches are some of the examples where it will store the data, some of the data which are required depending upon the application. Whereas in the combinational circuit, the clock does not make any sense here. The circuits do not rely on the clock here. But whereas in the sequential circuits, we mainly use these clocks for performing some triggering actions or control actions. In the combinational circuit, there is no feedback requirement, whereas in the sequential circuit, we require the feedback, as you can see it from this diagram here. The memory element, the past output which has been stored in the memory element are used to calculate or derive the current output from the input and the past outputs. So we require the memory element as well as the feedback which has been given to the circuitry. So this is again one more difference between combinational logic circuits and the sequential logic circuits. I am not going to in detail of this because briefly we have already touched upon what is a combinational circuit and sequential logic circuits. There are actually two types of sequential logic circuits. The one is we call it as a synchronous, and the other is called as a asynchronous. In the synchronous, in a general term, it completely depends upon the clock signal. So normally we call it as any behavior of the circuit completely depends upon the input signal at discrete instance of times. So it is synchronized with the clock. So as per the circuit diagram, if suppose your clock signal is level triggered, so depending upon your input, your output will be changed. If it is edge triggered, then at a particular edge, either it could be a positive edge triggered or a negative edge triggered, your output will change depending upon your inputs to the circuit. So it is synchronized with the discrete time instances. Whereas in the asynchronous, it does not rely on any of the instance of time. It is the behavior of the circuit completely depends on the input signal. So in order to get the change in the, at the output, if any change happens at the input, the same can be observed. So it is an asynchronous. It does not make any requirement of the clock signals. So the best example would be a combinational logic circuit with the feedback, whereas where we are not giving any clock. Only it depends upon the past output or the past states of the circuitry. So this is how we pictorially show the synchronous sequential circuits and the asynchronous sequential circuit. So you can observe from this diagram itself, it's a sequential circuit which requires the clock pulses to generate the output. Similarly, whereas the asynchronous sequential circuit, it does not require any clock pulses. It is not generating the output or deriving the output with reference to the clocks. Okay, those are called as asynchronous. How do you compare this? Normally, there will be a question from always from the students. See, if I am not using the clock, then how do I say that it is a sequential circuit? So normally, that is the question always arises when you teach this topic. So best way is you give the comparison between the synchronous and asynchronous. So where in the synchronous circuit, it requires the memory elements, and those are clocked flip-flops. So only based on the clock, your feedback which is being connected, which is the acts as a memory element which stores the previous data, can be used to generate or derive the output at the current state or the present state. Whereas in the asynchronous circuits, the memory elements are either unlocked flip-flops or the time delay flip elements. See here, the clock does not come into picture. Only the time delay, the propagation delay of the elements, the memory elements, will only contribute for deriving the present output. Okay, so those are called as asynchronous sequential elements. Normally the students will study this propagation delays of the gates or the transistors or any circuitry in the initial module of any of the, either in the electronic devices or in the digital circuits. They will understand this. So in synchronous circuit, the change in the input signal can affect a memory element upon activation of the clock signal only. It will not be updated until unless you provide a clock to the memory. So the memory, the storage element what we present in the circuitry, it will be affected only when there is a clock activation. Otherwise, it will not affect the memory or the storage element. Okay, whereas in the asynchronous, the input signals can affect the memory element at any instant of time. You just have to store, because it does not require any enable or the clock signals there. So as and when you provide an input to the circuitry, automatically the output will be derived irrespective of any control signal. So the same is stored in the memory also. Okay, as and when your main circuitry will generate it. Whereas in the synchronous, the maximum operating speed of the clock completely depends on the time delays involved in that. We will see how our clock will affect our circuit. But this is how our synchronous sequential circuits will completely based on the delays, the time delays involved in it. Whereas in the asynchronous sequential circuits is an absence of the clock. So synchronous circuits cannot operate faster than the synchronous circuits here. So asynchronous are always slower than the synchronous circuit, because it is only dependent on the propagation delays. Always synchronous sequential circuits are very easy to design, whereas asynchronous is more difficult to design the circuit. So when we are saying that the memory element or the storage elements, why we require this? What are the functions of this? Okay, so the main three functions we can highlight here on the storage elements. It need to store the data. That is, it should hold the data what has been sent to it as an input. Then accept the writing the new data. So already it has stored one data, 1 or a 0 as a logic 1 or a logic 0, but it wants to write the new data into it. So I have stored earlier 0, I want to now store it as 1. So your storage element should be capable of writing or providing the new data to be written into it. Then the read the stored data. So if suppose for any application you want to read it, you should be able to read it. So these are the three functionalities any storage elements normally provides. So where all we use these storage elements. Okay, we normally divide this into two components, the types of storage elements. One at the latches, where the examples are SR latch and the D latch. Whereas flip-flops, where we will be using the master-slave flip-flops, so the edge-triggered flip-flops, the D flip-flop, the data flip-flop, JK flip-flop, and the toggle flip. Okay, so these are the storage elements. One is the latches, where it will just depend, your output completely depends upon the input. Whereas the flip-flops, where the control element or the enable circuitry is required to control the output. Okay, so this is a broad classification of storage elements. Next, we move on to understanding what is the clock. Okay, why the clocks are required. So the clock signal is normally a particular type of signal that oscillates between the logic 0 or logic 1, that is the low state and the high state. And it will be utilized to coordinate the action of the circuits. Coordinating is nothing but the syncing. You want to sync it. Okay. I hope all of you might have seen in the Google Chrome also, you can sync your email as and when there will be an update, so you can get a notification for that. Or on the mobile phones, you can sync the data based on the current date and time. And normally in digital circuit design, we always use the 50% duty cycle, which will be a fixed one and with a constant frequency. Normally that is the arrangement by what we do it. So this is the clock signal. This is an ideal clock representation where at particular instant of time it will change from zero state to a one state, or the low state to high state, and it will be retaining that period, and again it will change from high to low, and this continues repetitive. And you observe that we have shown the high as well as the low period, which are equal in length. Okay, so that itself will give us the 50% duty cycle. But practically this is not possible. So we will see how do we do it. So here we are only concentrating on to the levels, how long the particular state will be retained in the time period. So you see that this is the high period or the high voltage, and this is the low voltage or the logic 0 and the logic 1. The next component is the clocks are also used to enable or derive the output of the circuit based on the transition. Okay, and that we call it as the edges. So you can see that this is the positive edge which has been shown here, and you understand when your logic 0 changes to a logic 1, we have a positive edge, and when logic 1 to a logic 0 changes, the transition happens, that we call it as a negative edge. Similarly, this is the negative pulse where we have from logic 0 to logic 1 initially, and that we represent it as a negative edge, and from 0 to 1 it will be a positive edge. Okay. This is an ideal characteristics what we see here, but practically when you generate the clock signal, uh, when you see it on the CRO with the zoom, this is what the clock signal what you can see. There will be some amount of the rise period and the fall period. So it takes some time to reach from this logic 0 to a logic 1. Okay, so this we call it as a rise time, and from 1 to logic 0 we call it as a fall time. So at exactly at the 50% of the height of the pulse, we measure the period of the signal. So the when your logic high is there, that we represent it as TH, and when your clock signal will be at logic low, it will be represented as a low timing, so that we call represent it as a TL. So the total period will be a TH plus TL, so that is the period of the signal. Okay, and here you observe that we have shown that it changes the state from logic low state to the high state and high state to the low state. So your period is represented as TPR. The frequency is the 1 divided by the period of the signal, and duty cycle we are always looking out for, since this is a positive pulse, we represent it as TH divided by T, total period of the waveform signal. So similarly, if the clock is low, which is going from high state to a low state, here also again we have a fall time and the rise time. So we represent it as TL and TH. When your clock pulse goes high, that period we represent it as TH and TL. Here, since it is the low going clock signal, so we represent the duty cycle with the TL divided by the total period. And this is the practical clock signal what we get it. Hope most of our faculty members, when they teach this microprocessor or the microcontroller timing diagram, they make use of this itself. Okay, there will be a some amount of time which the circuitry will take to change from low to high and high to low. So how do we normally get the basic memory elements? We were saying that as storage elements, Okay. Uh, this can be designed by making use of two inverter circuitry, okay, connected in series. So you can see that is a cascaded structure, and when I keep one, the output of the first inverter would be 0, that I represented it as a Q dash, and the output of the second inverter would be Q equal to 1. And this feedback has been given here. So continuously it will be monitoring or having the output 1. So you can see that the input is 1 and the output is 1. Will always store only one bit at a time. Okay, and this type of storage element, we call it as a latch. But this will not always sufficient, because this is in the loop, and always your input is 1 and your final output would be 1 again. Okay, I will not change this. So if I want to change, store something else, okay, this is one bit what I'm saving it in the memory. So how do I change this? I want to write a new value. Okay, some special enable circuitry is required to write the new data. Okay, to write the new data. So this is not suffice for the new data which can be written onto the memory element. Okay, this is a single bit memory element. So what we will do, we will go for the SR latch. Okay, S represents for the set and R represent for the reset. So you can save 0 or you can save 1. So depending upon what is your combination of SR. So always we study with respect to the NOR gate, and you can observe here the R and the S combination with the feedback which has been connected here, the cross feedback, and we get the Q and Q bar. This is the circuit symbol for the SR latch for the NOR gate, using the NOR gates. So this is a graphical symbolic representation. Always Q and Q bar will be complementary each other, and this is the characteristic table what we use it. So here what we do is you need to understand the truth table of the NOR gate, and based on the truth table of the NOR gate, you can write this Q and Q bar outputs. So what we have initially done here is, if you remember your NOR gate output, sorry, uh, NOR gate output, you see that if I represent A and B as inputs and Y as output, when both the inputs are 0, 0, my output will be 1. And for all other combination of the inputs, your output will be a 0. It's exactly the opposite of the OR gate. Okay. How do I analyze this is considering my R is 1 and S is 0. R is 1 and S is 0. I'm just taking this combination here. Later we can fill it up all this. As per the truth table of the NOR gate, you see that when my R is 1 and S is 0, my output of C for R, which is 1, any feedback element which comes to this particular first NOR gate, it does not make any sense, because your output Q will be a 0 when I set R is equal to 1 and S is equal to a 0, irrespective of this combination. If you see remember the truth table of the OR gate, when my R will be made equal to 1 and the other input could be either 0 or 1, my output will be always 0. So this 0, if I consider with the 0 of this combination, so what will be the output here? 0 with a 0, your Q dash will be 1. Okay, so this is the a combination what we are looking out, a 0 1 with 0 1. Okay, so you see that again this is coming 1, this comes as a 1, so this is 1, so 1 and 1 your output will be 0, and 0 and 0 your output will be again 1. So this combination holds good. Okay, so based on the NOR gate truth table, I derive this condition. So now I change my input to a 0 0. R is 0, S is 0. So what happens? My earlier combination was 0 and 1. So 1 comes here. The R we have made it to 0. So 0 and 1, what it will be? It will retain as 0 itself. And this 0 which comes with the 0, you can see that your output will be 1. Okay, that is what the first condition, 0 0, your output will be a 1 for the NOR gate. So you can see that my previous data or the previous output is retained here as a 0 1. The same we can look out for as giving the R bit 0 and the S bit 1. So you can see that when I say S bit 1 and R bit 0, my Q will be 1 and Q bar will be a 0. Again, you change after changing this output to a 0 0 combination, and it will be a 1 0. But when you see that when 1 1 is connected with any of these combinations of the output, previous output, if suppose I consider 0 1 itself, 0 and 1, when I change my R equal to 1 and S equal to a 1, so you can see that it is a 1 1, your output will be opposed to a 0 itself. Okay, and you see that it is a 0 and 1, it makes your output Q dash also a 0. So that is both your Q and Q bar. Actually, it should be a complement to each other, but here both are same. So that is the case where we are normally not using it. Whereas when my 0 0 inputs are given, you can observe that the previous state has been retained here. So that acts as a memory. And when my S bit is 1 and R bit is 0, your output will be a set. When my S bit is 0 and R bit is 1, my output is reset. Okay, so that's why we call it as a set reset latch using the NOR gate. So this is called as a characteristic equation. So when 1 1 is there, it's a forbidden state. When 0 0 has been given, it will retain the previous state as it is, and 1 0, your output will be a set. For 0 1, it will be a reset. Same I have explained here in terms of the statements. So this is how writing 1 into the memory cell, that is the set state. So I put R equal to 0 and 1 S equal to 1, and assuming that these are complementary. So earlier previous this thing was 1 and 0, so I just give 0 and 1. So 0 0, your output will be 1, the NOR gate, and 1 and 1, your NOR gate output will be a 0. So this is a set state. In the next class, this thing we want to hold this in the SR latch. So we will change our input to 0 0. So you see that the 0 0 will give you again 1 1 and 0, you will get a 0. So it will hold that state as it is. In the next state, we reset it by giving R equal to 1 and S equal to 0. It may be any combination. We have taken it from the previous example. This was 1 0. Now I have changed it to a 0 1 because I want to show that my output is reset. So it is 0 0. It will be output is 1, and 1 1, your output will be a 0. This hold state, again your S and R inputs will make it 0. So the previous state will be retained as the output. Okay, so this is the same combination. You can again study with the 1 1 what happens. Earlier it was 0 1. So you see that when 1 1 is given, your output changes to 0, and 0 and 1, your output again changes to the 0. So you can observe that it is a forbidden condition which is not used, because as per the definition, it should be a complement to each other, but they are not complement. So it is, the state is not defined or not used by for any of the designs. Moving on to looking at the timing diagram, how it works. Quickly, we will see this. This is your R input, and this is the set input. Okay. You see that initially we see our Q is low and Q bar is high. They are complement to each other. Okay, so when both are 0, 0, it will retain the state as it is. But when it changes from 0 and 1, your output is set. Okay, your output is set. And this will continue because again I have a 0, 0 here between T3, T4. Your R and S are 0, 0, so that will be retained as it is, the logic 1 for the Q. Okay, then it will go down because your reset is high and set is low, so it has changed from high state to a low state at the Q. Okay, again it will be the case where 1, 1 will be there between T5 and T6. So here you see that your Q will be a 0, so that will continue, whereas actually complement of the Q is Q bar, and here at this particular point you see that arrow which we have shown, it changes from high to a low for this particular period because T5 and T6 both are 1, 1, so where your output should be a 0, 0, okay, which is a forbidden state or not used state. And when again it will go to 0, the set input pin, so it will become 1, 0, so your Q will retain as it is, and because there is a change in the transition in the S, it is changed again to high, so it is exactly opposite. This is complement here, and it will continue because it is both are 0, 0, so the state of 0 will continue. And again between T8 and T9 it is 0 and 1, so for only that period it will be a 1. Again both are 1, 1, so it will be a 0. Okay, so this transition is very, very important. So when you teach it to the students, you need to draw the diagram and show them how it happens step by step. Moving on to the SR latch using the NAND gates. So again, this you can design based on the NAND gate truth table. So you can see that this is the symbol for the NAND gate, and we have SR and Q bar. Okay, earlier we used to have R and S. So the output of the NOR gate used to give me Q, whereas here now the input is yes and its output is Q. So you can see that this is a graphical symbol. It's just a complement of the inputs. So yes, get the Q and Q bar. So this is what we take the first condition, the 1 and 0, the 1 and 0. So again, for 1 and 0, you can see that your Q will be 0, which is complement. That's why we show here the complementary bubble here, okay, at the graphical symbol. So your Q will be 0. So you can see that 0 and 0 will give me a 1. Okay, so your Q and Q bar is 0 and 1. So if you give 1, 1, the S and R, you change it to 1, 1. So you see that the 1, 1, your output will be 0, and for 0 and 1, your output will be 1. So that will be a retain. So as we looked into the SR latch using NOR gate, your 1, 1 will act as a memory because it is retaining the previous state. Similarly, it happens for the combination of 0, 1 and 1, 1. So you can see that your 1, 0 output is retained by the combination 1, 1. Whereas, but when you give the 0, 0, your output will be 1, 1, which is again not used or the forbidden state. So this is the same thing we have explained. So this is just a comparison of your SR latch using the NOR and the NAND. So NOR, again, your forbidden state is 1, 1, whereas here the forbidden state would be 0, 0. So for the NOR, 0, 0 acts as a memory, 1, 1 acts as a memory for the NAND gate. So now we will move on to see that how do we store it, the data, and overcome the undefined or the forbidden state. So that can be done by using the latch here. Okay, so that is a latch. So one more NAND gate has been introduced before the latch. So you can see that this second part is the SR latch, whereas the first part is additional control signal has been added, which is an enable, and SR inputs has been given. So normally at the first output of the NAND gate, we represent S complement, I mean S star, whereas the second this thing will be the Q itself, the output of the SR latch. Whereas R, we have the R star, just to find out what would be the inputs to the latch here. And then we analyze this circuit. Again, you see that when I keep my enable bit as 0, your S and R may be anything. So it will just retain the previous output as it is. So there is no change in the next state. So the previous state will be copied as it is. Whereas when your enable bit will be a 1, 0, 0, again we have seen that 0, 0 will act as a no change element or the memory element. So it will be a no change. When your S bit is 0 and 1, your Q will be 0. That is because your reset bit is 1 and S input is 0. So your output is reset. And similarly for 1 0 combination, your output is set. And again 1 1 combination, it is not defined here. Okay. So this is how the outputs can be saved, and you can also change the output with the enable gate. So this is the same explanation has been given. So how do we generate the transparent latch, or transparent is you can see through. Okay, what you can see through the mirror. So that's why we call it as a transparent latch. So that is nothing but the data which has been given at the input is transferred to the output. So this is the SR latch, what you can see. The here the see I want to take up this only. I want to get output when my S is 0. I want to get the output 1 when my S is 1. So you see that these two combinations are complement to each other, 0, 1 and 1, 0. So that I'm trying to implement here by the same circuitry, SR latch with the gated or the enabled circuitry. So I'm just inverting the input. So my S as it is I'm connecting, the R is the inverted of that. So I have only one input. And this again uses to store the one input bit in the latch. Okay. This is a quick data latch characteristic table. This is the circuit symbol here. So when your enable is 0, whatever may be your X, the previous state will be retained as it is. There will not be any reflection of the data which will be transferred here. But when your enable bit is 1, your data is 0, your output will become a 0, transparent through. So your enable bit is 1, your D is 1, your output will become 1. See, when we use this enable, how does your circuitry will behave? Okay, that we would like to know here in the form of the enable as the clock signal. There are three different conditions what we make use of to overcome the uncertainties in the latches. So one would be the response to the positive level. So as long as your clock is high, your circuitry or the latch will be always responding to the input. Okay, that we call it as a level triggered latch. Whereas the other condition would be how your circuitry will behave is having a special circuitry which will identify the transition from low to high or high to low. So that we call it as a positive edge response. So during the positive edge response, that is when your clock will change from the 0 to 1, your output will be derived based on the input signal, okay, at that particular instant of time. Similarly, for the negative edge trigger, when it changes from high to low, okay. This is how normally it happens. It keeps changing as long as the clock remains active for the positive level triggered. All the latches, SR latch or the D flip flop, sorry, D latch. What is that we find the problem with the latch timing when it will be a level triggered? Okay, so whenever your enable will be active high, even though there is any changes at the input, it will be reflected at the output. Okay, so if your logic level 1 or the high is for a huge amount of time, then there is any changes which occurs at the input of the latch will be reflected at the output. Okay, sometimes it happens that your inputs S and R will be always toggling between 0 and 1. So automatically our output also will be a toggling between 0 and 1. So you see that there will be always a race condition which happens because your output will be always trying to toggle between 0 and 1. Okay, and if you see that your during the positive period, half period of the clock period, that is the T by 2, if suppose you assume that your T is the time period of the clock, T by 2, if it is your T by 2 is always greater than the propagation delay of the uh, gates, then always your output will be always toggling between 0 and 1. So normally what happens is you will not understand what has been stored, and if you rigging up in some specific applications, then the application also will not come to know what is that you are giving at the input. So because of that, there is a huge disadvantage of using the level trigger. So because of this reason, normally the people go for finding out the output at the edges. Okay. So how to overcome this problem is by using the three methods. The first one would be you can say that your T by 2 is far less than the propagation delay, so that you will be able to observe the output as per the input signal, so that your on period of the enabled clock will be very small. The second would be you can use the edge triggered latches, where only when there is a transition from low to high or high to low, the output will be generated. Or the third condition would be a master slave flip flop. So you use the circuitry in such a way that two uh, latches connected in series, that is the cascaded mode. The first one will act as a master. The second one will be acting like a slave. So when the first latch generates the output, the second will not generate the output because they have been connected in a master slave mode, where the second latch will be inactive when the first latch is active. Similarly, when the second latch is active, the first latch will be inactive. So the output will, the input is not reflected at the output. So because of that, we either use these three methods to overcome the level triggering of the latches. Okay, so it can be, that is what we understand from the edge triggered or the edge sensitive memory also, we call it. So that we will see here, how does it work. So normally the latches we use it for the level triggered, positive level triggered. Whereas flip-flops, we use it where the transition happens from low to high or high to low. Those we call it as a positive edge and the negative edge responses. This is the comparison of the level sensitive and the edge triggered storage elements. Okay, all the three I have included here. This is the best way of teaching the students how your circuitry will behave for the level sensitive and edge triggered sensitives. So the first circuitry here, the QA and QA bar output, you can see that it is a level triggered. So this symbol where we don't have the triangle, that indicates it is a level triggered. When we have a triangle at the input pin of the clock, then we call it as an edge triggered. That is a positive edge triggered. If there is a bubble along with the triangle, then we call it as a negative edge triggered. Okay, so this is the best example where your clock is for 50% duty cycle, and my D varies. Okay, randomly I changed my signal. And QA, how it functions. One by one we will understand here. So at this particular, till this particular point, even though my D is 1, my clock is not enabled, so your output is 0. It will retain the previous state itself. When my clock goes to a positive, my D is also positive. During that period, again, it will be changing to 1. Okay, your output. Again, your D input is 0, so output also will become 0. Again 1, so it will be 1, till your positive edge goes from, positive level goes from the positive to a negative, or the high level to the low level. So you can see that it will be, till this point, it will be the same. After that, even though there is any changes, since your clock, which is a negative level, so it will retain as it is. And again, it will change in the next positive half cycle or the positive level. That is for the edge trigger. So you see, this is the waveform what we are getting at the QA. QB is during the positive cycle, this from low to high, and similarly from low to high. You can observe that there is a change from low level to high level because your D is changed. And this will be retained till it encounters the low to high edge. Okay, at this point, you see that your D input is 0, so it has changed from high to low and continues till it will get a next positive edge trigger, positive edge clock. Whereas QC is a negative edge triggered, so it will just wait for this particular negative going edge from high to low state. So you see that till then it will retain as it is. Here observe that your D is 0, so it will be retaining till it comes to the next negative going pulse or the negative edge. So here your D is 1, so it is changing from 0 to 1, and this will continue. Okay. Is this fine, all of you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Is that they wish to ask any questions, or if they are feeling bored and all, please let me know so that I'll take up with some problems and all. Okay.
Okay, sir. Fine, sir. Now.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. This is a master slave flip-flop. The one we showed is the positive and the negative is triggered, how it works. Now we have a master slave deal. So we have a slave and the master, which is similar to the latch itself, which is having an enable component. But when I'm connecting the clock, I'll be connecting it to the master directly, whereas to the slave through the inverter. So you can see that I'll be just understanding this circuitry, how it works for the master slave with a clock, the D input, the intermediate output of the master, and the final output of the slave. So that we will see. So you see that till this positive edge, or if you consider this is at edge, level trigger, till then it will retain output as it is. Okay, similarly your Q also. During this positive cycle, my D changes from 0 to 1, 0 to 1. So my output of the master is also changes from 0 to 1. But here I'm giving the inverter to the slave, inverted clock to the slave. So instead of a positive level, my slave will work for the negative level. Okay, so you observe here. So this will change only during the negative level. So it has now changed because this is a positive here. So it will be a positive, changes from 0 to 1. You observe at this particular point again during the positive cycle, my Y output, I change to 0 from high to low because my D has changed from high to low in this period. So it will be low till it receives again the positive clock, where again at this point your D is high, so it will be high. You see the D flip-flop, where again when the negative level comes, your D input is 0, or you can see that instead of D input, your slave will be looking out at the output of the master, which is given as the input to the slave. So at this particular instant here during the negative clock, it changes from high to low and it continue again at the new negative level. Your slave will be again active because your input is 1 here to the slave, so that will be 1. So you see that this is an delayed output, a delayed output. So this overcomes the switching action for the flip-flop, which is normally happens during the level triggered uh, flip-flops. Okay, this is the same thing has been explained in the statements. So moving on to the edge triggered, understanding the level triggered with the master slave. Now we will move on to the edge triggered component. So edge triggered, normally we show it instead of a 0 and 1 where we used to mention it as the enable. Now we are showing it as the arrow symbol. Okay, the up arrow normally used for the positive edge, and the down arrow normally used for the negative edge. So this is a negative edge triggered D flip flop. This is a positive edge triggered flip flop. So you can see that this is the characteristic diagram here. Your QT is 0. Your clock has been given. Your D has been given as input 0. So your output will be retained as it is, which is 0. So when clock is 1, your D is 1. Your previous output may be 0. It will change it to 1 because my input D is given as 1. So at the positive edge trigger, it changes to 1. So next, D is 0. Again, the clock pulse comes 0 and 1. The clock pulse there, it changes to 1. You observe here, irrespective of the previous state, my current state will completely depends upon the input D what I'm giving here. Okay, so from this particular characteristic table, normally we get the excitation table. Okay, how your output uh, states require the input data. So quickly we'll see here how does your edge trigger D flip flop will work. So this is not a 50% duty cycle, but less than that. You can see that only for a small period of time your clock pulse is on and then it will be off. Our only botheration here is your clock when it changes from low to high, you should have a triggering for the flip-flop. So you can see that at 0, at this particular clock pulse, your output is 0 itself. It will be retained till here also. Even then that during this positive pulse, your input has been changed, but that will not be reflected at the output of the edge trigger D flip-flop because it is looking out for the a change in the clock pulse from low to high state. Okay, at this point it is in the high state itself, so it is not looking. At this particular point, you see, observe that your clock pulse going from low to high. So your D is 1, so your output also changes from 0 to 1. till again you see the next positive going edge. So again your output is 0, so it changes to 0, and again it will be 1 for this 2 clock pulses or the 2 positive edge triggered, so it will retain. Since your Q bar is a complement of that, so you can draw this diagram. This is the master slave JK flip flop. Okay. Uh, Again, we have a slave latch and a master latch. And in the JK flip-flop, what we do is we give the feedback as the input here, one of the input. So the Q is connected to the input along with the K and the clock to one of the NAND gate, and Q bar is connected to the J. Okay, so this is the master slave latch or the flip-flop, where the first part will be a master, second part will be the latch. Only the feedback is directly connected here from the final output. Okay, and also you observe your slave is connected through the clock, inverted clock, and your slave component will be controlled. Okay, so when master is active, slave is inactive. When master will become inactive, slave will become active. So here the QM and QM bar, or QN and QN bar, are the QM and QM bar are the outputs of the master, and the QN and QN bar will be the output of the slave. So this is the combination which has been shown here. For 0 and 1, your 0 0 combination of JK, it will be holding. When it will clock pulse changes from the 1 to 0, you observe here this is the arrow which has been shown here for the changing from low state to high state. So it is a edge triggered flip-flop. So 1 to 0, it will hold both the data. When it will be from 0 to 1, your master will be acting 0 1, your output will be 0 1. Since at that time your clock will be, for the slave, is moving from high to low, so it will keep the previous state as it is, hold the previous state. Observe here the third row of this table, characteristic table. Again, at the input 1 0 with a 0 1, so it will hold, whereas this 0 and 1 will be transferred at the output of QN bar for the through the slave. So it is a 0 1. Again 0 1 at the input. This is the fifth row here. Your JK will be a 1 0. Your output of the master will be 1 0, and the output of the slave will be holding. And similarly for the next case 1 0. When you make it from 1 to 0, your master will be inactive, whereas your slave will be active. That's why it is changing to 1 0. But when 0 to 1 both are 1 1, it will be a toggling. If suppose you have a 0 1 condition, it will be a 1 0. Whereas slave will not change, because again your slave is a hold condition. So when 1 0 is connected, the last row of the table, both are 1 1. So it will hold as it is, but your output will be a toggling. Okay, so this is the characteristic table for the master slave. So this is again the same timing diagram which has been shown here. This is the JK flip-flop. We can use it in design it using the D flip-flops. So you can observe here, I can directly write here the Q of the next state of the D flip-flop is in terms of J Q dash plus K dash Q. And when J and K is 1, the output is complemented. Whatever the previous state, if it is 0 and 1, it will become 1 and 0. If it is 1 and 0, it will become 0 and 1. So J sets the flip-flop and K resets the flip-flop. That you might have observed here. J sets the flip-flop and K resets the flip-flop, 0. Okay, so that is how we are using here. So this is the Q bar is connected through the AND gate and XOR. So that is the equation, the characteristic equation what we are getting. So J Q dash plus this is K dash Q. It is coming from the feedback from the output of the D latch. And those both of them are odd and given as an input to the T flip-flop. This is again an edge triggered here. You can observe this, and this is a graphical symbol for the JK flip-flop. So this whole together is a JK flip-flop symbol using the D latch or the D flip-flop. You can also develop a D flip-flop. As you know, here in this particular state, the last state, the 1-1, it will be always toggling. So this T is also called as a toggle flip-flop. So the same input need to be given to the both the J and K. So that will toggle the output. So that's why we short here, and this is the graphical symbol for the T flip-flop. And your next state can be obtained as T XOR with Q. So when T is equal to 0, there will not be any change. When T equal to 1, it will be complementing the output. So your T toggle flip-flop is a complementing flip-flop. This is T flip-flop. We can generate it by using the D flip-flop also. The same, I would like to get the XOR combination. So I just take this bit here, XOR with the T, and give it as a D input. And you can generate the same. When T equal to 0, no change will happen. When T equal to 1, your complement of the toggle will be right. So this circuitry will be for the JK representation using D flip-flop. This circuitry is designing the D flip-flop using the D flip-flop, the T flip-flop from the D flip-flop. This is a quick review what we have done till now, the SR, JK, D and T. The second column is showing the characteristic table. The fourth table will be showing you the excitation table for the SR, JK, D and T. Okay. Flip-flop representation here, again the same I have just taken up the gist which how we obtain the SR flip-flop. For any flip-flop representation, you require the present state and the previous state. So always it is need to know that how do you generate the next state. So that we can obtain it by using the characteristic table. So you see that this is the flip-flop inputs S and R. We have a present state or the present output and the next output. Okay, so you can observe this can be obtained from the excitation table, and we can write the K-map to simplify the next state output in terms of the S, R and the previous state. So to write that characteristic equation, you can see that your Qn plus 1 will be S plus R dash Qn. So always when I'm representing the flip-flop, it will be representing the next state equation in terms of the present state and the present inputs. Okay, this is SR. This is quickly the D flip-flop. So you can see that how your output will be changing. So you can see that present input may be 0, 1, 0, 1, but your output will change when your inputs are 0, 0 or outputs are 0, 0. When input is 1, 1, your output is 1, 1. And we get the D and Qn, okay, for writing the Qn plus 1 equation. This is for the JK. So already we have seen this, the J into Qn dash plus K dash into Qn. So this is how we get the equation for the next state. Okay, so I hope all of you can understand this. Once you teach this, it will be very easily you can understand and teach it to the students also. This is for the T flip-flop. So it will just toggle when your inputs are 0, 0, it will be as it is. You can observe here. When 1, 1, your output will be toggling. So it is 0 will become 1 and 1 will become 0. So this you just feed it in the K-map here and obtain the equation. So you can see that it is T Qn dash plus T dash Qn. That is what we write it as the T XOR Qn. So this is the characteristic equation. Normally we use it for representing the flip-flops. So D flip-flop, this is just a summarized. Again, the excited with respect to the characteristic truth table or characteristic table or the truth table, we obtain these equations. And this is the excitation table, which already we have derived it. So if my state changes from 0 to 0, my j will be 0, k is does not make any sense there, because j will make it same. So when 0 to 1 change happens, so your j should be 1 and k could be anything, 0 or 1, because I'm setting the bit. Whereas when my j is 0, I'm resetting it. So the same happens here with 1 0, 1 to 0. Your k is 1, so your output is 0. It could be anything for j, and similarly for the other. So the same has been given here for the SR. This is the symbolic representations of the flip-flops. The next comes is asynchronous inputs. These are not sync with the clock signal. Those are called as the direct inputs, which will change or forcibly changes the output. Those are called as there are two pins for this, or the functions. One is the preset and the other is a clear. Apart from the regular pins here, okay, for the input, the clock, the outputs Q and Q bar, there are two more controlling signals have been given, which is preset and the clear. The clear will make forcibly changes your output to 0 irrespective of your D and the clock. When it will be, you see that it is logic 0 active inactive state. Here also it is active during the negative value or the low value. So your preset will set your output to 1 irrespective of your D and Q bar. These are called as a direct input. So it does not make any sense here, and I mean of the clock and the inputs, but always it is asynchronous inputs. Your inputs will be not reflected at the output until unless you make this preset and clear inactive. Okay, so if you connect it to high, then your flip-flop will work transferring the D to the Q whenever there is a negative edge triggered pulse will come at the clock. Okay, otherwise if you keep this active, that is low is connected to the preset, your output will be 1, and clear is connected to the low, your output will become 0. So these are the two extra inputs, which are asynchronous inputs, or normally we call it as a direct inputs. This is again the summary of what we have studied till now. I'll just skip this part. This also we studied. We move on to the finite state machines. How do we design to understand the behavior of the sequential system, or which tool we use it to understand the behavior of the circuit for the inputs and the clock. So for that we use the finite state machines. So it consists of different states. It will be represented graphically. It will be normally represented with what is that input you are giving, what is the output you are getting, and what is the state of your system or the sequential circuit, from where it will be moving. All that we can understand through the finite state machines. So normally, what are the components we look here are input variables, the output variables, the state variables, okay, and the excitation variable. The input variables are the variables that originate outside the sequential machines, and that are normally said as input variable. You give the input to the system or the machine. The output variables that exit the sequential machine, that is the output what you observe. Okay. The state variables are the output of the memory. Normally it defines the state of the sequential machine. In which state? Suppose I'm going to define the three states for a machine, S0, S1 and S2. Then at particular time, your machine is in which state? It defines it as S0 or S1 or S2. Or if suppose your machine is in S0, then if I provide a specific input, where it will be changing from which state to which state. Okay, so normally these are decoded based on the input variables which we will be using it, the milli and Moore machine configuration, and which produces the output variables. So normally the excitation variable are the inputs to the memory which changes the state, and the name of the excitation is why we call this as an excitation. It excites the memory to change from one state to another state. How do we define the state here? It is normally defined as the output of the flip-flops. So if you consider there are X number of state variables, that is examples or flip-flops, then there will be a 2 raised to X, which is a maximum number of possible states can be had. So if you are using one flip-flop, then there will be only 2 states. Okay. If you are using 2 flip-flops in the sequential circuit, then it will be having 2 raised to 2, which will be a 4 states. So how do I represent the states now? If it is only one flip-flop, then it will be either 0 or 1. If it is 2 flip-flops, then it will be 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0 and 1, 1. If you are using 3 flip-flop, then it will be 8 different states and so on. Okay. The present state will represent at a particular instant of time your clock which has been given to the machine, and that will be your state, the present state. The next state is when you provide an excitation to the state machine, it will change the state. The machine state changes, and that we call it as a next state. This is a simple representation of the simple state table. The present state and the next state. So that is F1, F2, F1, F2. With the timing here, you see that it is normally represented as T plus 1, which will give you the next state of the machine output, and T represents the present state output. This we will be just quickly understanding the milli and the Moore machine notations. This is a milli notation where your X will be the input variable and Y will be the output variable. And A and B are the two states representing two different states of the state machine. And here you see that this self loop shows that the X, when your input is X and the output Y is generated, it will be in the same state. But when X is the input and the output is Y dash, it will change from A state to B state. Similarly, the vice versa here, your X dash is given, your output is Y, it will change from B to A. The self loop again, your input is X, but output is Y dash, then it will be in the same state. Here in the Moore machine, normally the states will be identified based on the output. Okay, if in the particular state, if it generates the output 0 and the output 1, based on that we draw it. You see that the input is 0 and it will be in the same state because it generates the output 0 itself. When j equal to 1, it will change the output from 0 to 1, the toggle, so it will be moving to the q equal to 1. If k is 0, it will be in the same state, and if k is equal to 1, it will again change from 1 to 0. Here you look for the state in the milli state notation. You also need to know what is your input variable, what is the output of the state machine. Whereas in the Moore machine notation, it only requires the output with respect to the states and the input. So these are some of the diagram which the combination of both the milli and the Moore. So you see that it is the states are represented as A, B, C, D. Its respective outputs will be as Z dash, Z dash, Z and Z dash, and that particular state. Whereas again here the milli outputs are Y. So when your input is X and the output is Y, it will change from A to B. This is how we read it. Okay. Single input variable with one exit, two exits. Okay, when your input is X dash, it will be in the same state. If your input is X, then it will move to the B. Similarly here, when it is input is X, it move to B, and X dash it is C, and so on. This is different states. There's another three input variable. This is just a partial state diagram which has been shown here. When input is X, it will move from A to B, irrespective of your Y and Z. When your Y and Z dash is there, irrespective of X, so from B to C, it will move. X and Y are don't care. When Z is 1, it moves from C to A. This is how we should read it. So when we describe the finite state machines, we require three components. One is the state equation, that is a transition equation. Whereas a state table is required in which the input variable, present state, next states, and the truth tables are important, and a state diagram. Okay, so one by one we will see this in detail. So this is an example one where we analyze the sequential circuit using the finite state machines. So you can see that this is a circuit diagram, sequential circuit example has been given. And I have written the equation for the next state, A of t plus 1, which will be the feedback which we are connecting as A of t, and the input is X of t. This is XORed with the X and the, you see the feedback of B. So that I am writing it as A of t into X of t plus B of t into X of t. When I'm going to generate the B of t plus 1, the next state of the D flip-flop output, the second flip-flop, it is, you see that it is the A dash which has been connected and with the X, so that will give you a B. Whereas when I'm generating the output Y, it is, you see that the A is connected ORed with the B, so A of t OR with B of t, and the X of t is complemented and. So that way I'm going to generate. So these are state equations. Whereas for the state table, it is the present state, the input, the next state, and the output what we will be using it. To generate this next state, we normally use the excitation table as well as the characteristic table of those flip-flops, whichever you are using here. I'm using it for the simplicity, the D flip-flop, so I'll be using the characteristic table of the D flip-flop. So you see that my input is X. This is very easy to now generate because my next table can be obtained based on the previous state. Okay, so since already I have written the state equations, my next state and the output can be easily obtained. So it is 0, 0, 0. You see that it is 0, 0 plus 0, 0 will become 0. So my A state is 0. B output is again 0 because A dash is 1. 1 into 0 will become 0. Output A plus B of t and X dash of t. So it is 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 into the 0th complement is 1. It will become 0. So this is how we fill this table. And based on this table, we will be generating the state diagram. So you see that we have, since I'm using only two flip-flops here, I'll be having four states. So it will be represented as 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, and 1. So you need to practice for drawing the state diagram. Sometimes your path will overlap, okay? But after practicing sometimes different problems, you can easily do this. Uh, this is a 0, 0 state. So it will move to 0. You can see that it is input is 0, your output is 0, and it will be in the same state. Similarly, 1, 0, you see that it will be changing from uh, 1, 0. I consider 1, 0. Okay. So it will be changing to 0, 0 state when your input is 0 and output is 1. This. It will be in the same state when your input is 1 and the output is 0. Okay, so this is how you draw this diagram using the state table and the state equations. This is another example of analysis of the D flip-flop with the circuit diagram. So you can see that I can write the DA, the next state, by writing A XOR X or Y. So this is the first part, and that is XORed with the feedback signal, so that we can write it here. So use the state table to write the next state. Okay, here there is no output, so I'm just considering the inputs. So it will be only one flip-flop, so only two states, 0 and 1 state. So it will be in the same state when your inputs are 0, 0 and 1, 1. So you see that the first row and the fourth row. So because of that, it is the comma and the two inputs have been given here. Okay, so if it changes from 0 to 1 in these two conditions, the second row and the third row, you see that your inputs are 0, 1 and 1, 0, and this continue the same thing. I think you can write this. This is another example with the JK flip-flop. So we have the next state outputs of JK flip-flop as A and B, and X is one of the input and the clock signal. So this is the state input equations. J will be B, K will be B X dash, J will be B. You can see the circuit diagram, and the K will be X dash and B dash and B. Similarly, the JB and KB can be written. Okay, so based on that, you can write the uh, next state, that is the state table, and what could be your flip-flop inputs based on the JK flip-flop excitation table. You can write that. Okay, this is the state diagram, what we can have it based on the state table, which will be a present state, the input, and the next state. You write this. This is another example using the two T flip-flops. Ganesh sir, can I just continue for another 10-15 minutes? Is it okay?
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah. So quickly I'll
Yeah.
do this. Okay. This is the same circuit diagram, and the circuit, based on the circuit diagram, we will be writing the state equations or the input-output equations. And this is how we can write the equation: Q of t plus 1. The Q of t plus 1, we can write it, you know that it is t XOR Q. So for the two different flip-flops, I'll write the output for first flip-flop as A of t plus 1, which will be in terms of TA XOR with A, where my TA is X and the B, X and B. So that I'm writing uh, as a X and B dash A plus BX A dash. So if you expand it, it is AB dash plus AX dash plus A dash BX. And similarly for the BT plus 1, from this diagram, you see that X is directly connected here. So it will be X XOR B. Directly I can write this. So Y is your both this A of t plus 1 and B of t plus 1 is ANDed, and accordingly you get this output Y. So from this state table, I can write the state diagram. So here this I'm using here the Moose model where when I'm in the same state, my output will be a 0. When I'm in the state 0 and 1, my output will be a 0. 1 0, your output will be a 0, whereas 1 1, your output will be 1. So I'm using that advantage here, and instead of every time I'll be writing it the output for every input, I can only write once. That is sufficient. Okay, using this Moore's model, I'll be writing the state diagram. This is actually I wanted to highlight on the Mealy and Moore. Most of the time, that is what the Mealy machine representation are used, where moving from one state to another state or the self state, always you use both the input as well as the output for the representation. How your Mealy machine will work is you see that when I'm computing the output, okay, uh, through the combinational logic circuit, it makes use of both the actual current input as well as the previous state inputs. Okay, whereas the Moore machine, it does not require the current input. Okay, that's why I'm just directly writing my output there. So I've taken both the example here, the Mealy and the Moore model. This was our Mealy model, and this was our Moore type. Okay, a Mealy and Moore type. This is a synthesis of T flip-flops. Quickly, I'll take up this one example here. How do we generate the 3-bit binary counter that can be counted from 0 to 7 with a step of 1. So what would be our first step to identify that to count from 0 to 7, I require 3 bits representation. So it will be a 3 flip-flops. In the second step, what I'll do is I'll be writing the state diagram here. So from 0, 0, 0 to 0, 0, 1, it will be in step of 1. So it will be 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1, 1. So our next step would be identifying the state table from the present and the next state through the state diagram and the characteristic equation as well as the excitation table. So you can see that I'll be writing this state diagram from the present state to the next state. So you see that 0, 0, 0, it will be 0, 0, 1 and so on. When it reaches to 1, 1, 1, it will again move to 0, 0, 0 because it's in the cycle. And this is our excitation table. When it is moving from 0 to 0, your toggle bit will be a 0 itself. When 0 to 1, your output is 1 because it's toggle. And similarly, for 1, 1, it will be a 0 because it retains the same. So my T will be this. So based on this excitation table, I'll be writing my flip-flop inputs for TA0, TA1, and TA2. Writing this from this excitation table, I can write the excitation equations for the JK. So now I know what is my output requirement. So I'll be exciting the inputs of the flip-flops. So this is an excitation equations what we will be writing. So TA2 based on this the seventh row here, only at 2 positions it is 1 1. So substituting the K map, simplifying, we get TA2 as A1 A0 Similarly, for TA1 will be A0 and TA0 will be 1. So with this knowledge, we can draw the equation here, the simplified Boolean expressions for the inputs and the outputs. So you can see that for the A0 bit, it will be 1. For TA1, your output should be the A0, the output of the previous bit. And similarly, the TA2, it will be from the TA1 and the A0. So that and you do it and give it as an 1. So these are the excitation inputs to work this circuitry as an the counter 0002 0111 up to 1 in step of 1. Whenever you excite the clock signal, automatically your output will change. This is another example where the state diagram has been given and we have to generate from this. Again, you can see that this is a mood notation that has been used. And just an example, so we'll derive the state table here from the excitation table. So you can see that it is 0, 0. Your next state is 0, 0. The input is 0, 0, 0. Your changes to 0, 1, that is S1 with the input 1. Similarly, the 0, 1, that is it may be at this state, and when you give 0, it will be back to the 0, 0 state. Okay, so using that we write this, and from this you can find out the output Y. This is the simplification for the inputs. This is the final expressions what we write it, and then draw the circuit diagram using the D flip-flop with the more type of model representation for the state diagram. This is again one more excitation. This thing actually, I think I can skip this because resistors quickly. We will see these resistors. It's again a memory element that can be used to store more than a single bit in combination of flip-flops with a common control signals. How you want to use it, as I was mentioning, you can serial in, serial out, serial in, parallel out, and so on, so combinations. So it should have the two specific control signals. One is the load or the store, and the other is read operation. The load or the storage load is you write the input data into the resistor, and sometimes people are also called as call that as storing the data. Reading is you retrieve the stored data. Normally we use this in the digital computer for storing the information. So this is a serial input and serial output resistor, where serially you input the data, and this is a 4-bit serial input, serial output, and you get the serially output data. Okay, if you tap this Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4, then it will become serial input, parallel output. Okay, so initially at T0 clock pulse, at time instant T0, your input is 1 and all the outputs are 0, assuming that it has been reset using the clear direct input or asynchronous input. When the T1 comes, this 1 will be transferred as the output. When the clock pulse comes here, it will be transferred as the output. So previously it was 0, so it is all this will be just propagated. Similarly, the T2, you feed it with the time clock. At that instant, you again change your input to 1. So you see that the 0 will be propagated here in the diagonally downward. You can just see that. And what I'll be getting at the output, which is 1011, as the output after the fourth clock pulse 1011. Okay, what I want to transfer serially 1011, I'll get this only after the fourth bit, fourth to seventh. I'll get the 1011 at the serial output. So this is one of the resistor where till you get the next clock pulse, so the data will be retained as it is. This is a parallel in, parallel out. So parallelly you provide the inputs here I0 to I3 and get the output A0 to A3. Here again initially to make it outputs forcibly to 0, so we have a clear which has been connected. The clock is just controlling, transferring the data from input to the output. This is another combination where the parallel input and output with the control signal, the load control signal. Okay, so these are the circuit diagram where whenever there is a load which is 1, it will transfer all this I0 to I3 to the A0 to A3. If your load is 0, it will retain as it is the previous state. Any number of clocks you give, it does not make any change here. Okay, so this is the control signal what we will be using it. This is a serial addition using the resistors. This is very rarely used because at the third semester or fourth semester this will be a little difficult to understand. But overview can be given here. That is getting the full adder. There is full adder circuitry and one D flip-flop and two shift resistors. These two shift resistors are the serial shift resistors. So you can see that the serial in, serial out pin. And similarly, we have a shift control here, which we will be using it for both the resistors. So bit by bit when I'm performing the addition, normally if you just use one full adder circuitry, only one bit can be added and you again change the bit. But this is in a loop here. So what happens is you can serially this is normally if this is a 4-bit serial shift resistor, this is maybe a 4-bit shift resistor. You can do it automatically with the help of the clock. So after 4 clock, you will see the addition of the 4 bits. Okay, that is how this will be implemented. And every time the carry is connected through the D flip-flop. So this will be the third input bit for the full ladder circuitry. This is making use of, instead of a JK flip-flop in the full ladder, this is by making use of JK flip-flop and the XOR gate. So we have the S and there is a carry which will be generated by the output of the J flip-flop, and two inputs are provided through X and Y. So we write the JQ as XY, the K as X plus Y cap, and S as XY and Q. All those are XORs, and we get the sum output. So this is the serial addition using the resistor table. Universal shift resistor is again a very important shift resistor. Many digital circuits we use this. You can use this universal shift resistor for serial input, serial output, serial input, parallel output, or parallel input, serial output, and parallel input, parallel output. Okay, so these are the control signals. Special control signals are used for S0 and S1. Which when both are 0, 0, there will not be any change. When it is 0 and 1, it will be shifting right. 1, 0, it will be shifting left. If 1, 1, you will be using it as a parallel load and parallel take out the data. Okay, so you can have the either shifting the bits from the left side or right side. So that is a more significant bit and the least significant bit you can add and take out the parallel output data. This is using the mux and the D flip-flop. Counters, I think we have done it, one counter there. The same counters can be used. Only I would like to take up here just 2 minutes. I'll just conclude this. These are some of the examples. I thought if I get, I'll do it. This is very important whenever you teach the students about the unused states. So for the counters, you are developing a 0 to 5 or a mod 5 counter. Okay, so you require 3 bits. So what happens to the remaining states? So that is very, very important. So here, this is one of the example which I have taken it from 0 to 5. And you see that after when it reaches to the state 5, what will happen to this 110 and 11? Okay, so it should be a force to go to a 0 itself. Okay, so that's what we do it here. So for the combination of 110 and 111, we make it 000. So even though irrespective of the state where you start your counter, if it is 111, it immediately it should start from 0, or 110, it should start from 0 again. So this is one of the design problem always everybody looks into, and how you considering that you can since this is given here the T flip-flop, so using the excitation table you can force your inputs for the T. This is how you can do it. Another is this is the self-correcting counters also. Many a times the people use it. So you see that it is 0 0 0 0 1 0. Then normally it will be a 1 0 0 which we represent here, or 1 1 1 after 1 0 1 you may be having it. So automatically it will be re-initiated with the states. Okay, this is a state diagram for the synchronous mod 6 counter. So 100 will be treated as 010, and 111 will be treated as 101. So this is how this is normally called as the self-correcting counters. Actually, I wanted to show you one of the simulation also, that since the time is very less, we won't be able to do that. I think these all the extra problems I have just added. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to discuss with you.